Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Daybreak. I'm Anthony Durzo.
And I'm Jillian Musser. This week we have updates on the good and the bad happening here in the Berg.
Make sure you stick around to catch up on Steelers season during Sam's Sideline Slice with reporter Samuel Parator.
And PolitiSmack, this week's political news with reporter Kalyan Winder.
Wake up and smell the coffee, Pittsburgh. Daybreak starts right now.
Welcome back. Let's get started with your campus news. Here's your weekly weather update with Ethan Rowinski.
Thanks, Anthony and Jillian. I hope everyone enjoyed our little bits of sunshine last week because we're coming up on some cloudy and dull skies. It's forecasted for next week that will have temperatures in the range of about mid-40s to the low 50s, and that's just the highs. Luckily, the only expected precipitation is the chance of rain on Tuesday. The sun may peek out a bit on Thursday, but aside from that, it may be time to pull out your old hats and sweaters. Any thoughts from our hosts?
No, not good at all. It was warm yesterday.
Yeah, it was, but you know what? I like the sun. I don't want it behind the clouds. I need the sun.
Well, today was odd because it was like really cold and rainy in the morning, but now it's kind of like hot outside and it was like really bright.
You know, that's Pittsburgh for you. Nothing new. Thanks for the updates, Ethan.
Let's get started with this week's campus news.
The UPass pilot program granting selected Point Park students free access to Pittsburgh Regional Transit is now in effect. This is a trial conducted by Point Park's Director of Student Life, Desmond McCoy, and Vice President of Student Affairs, Keith Palo. 20 resident students and 30 commuter students are part of this trial who have access to the October UPass through their Ready to Ride app on their phones. This program will conclude November 1st, where feedback from those students will be given in order to identify if there is a need for all Point Park students to be granted access on free rides on Pittsburgh Regional Transit.
Looking for something spooky to do this weekend? The Experience Pittsburgh Committee and the Campus Activity Board are sponsoring a haunted ropes course at Camp Gustie. This event will take place from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. this Saturday. Shuttles will be providing transportation. There will be hay rides, late night climbing, and more. There will be a non-scare time from 3 to 6 p.m. and a scary time from 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are available now for $10 and $5 for non-ziplining guests. Reservations are required, so get yours now before they run out.
On Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, discovery sessions will be held as part of the university-wide strategic planning process with Point Park's external partner, Studer Education. Everyone part of the Point Park community is invited to the 45-minute sessions and are asked to provide feedback and recommendations regarding their experience at Point Park thus far. Tuesday's session at 3:30 along with Wednesday's session at 5:30 will be held in room 719 in Academic Hall. The session scheduled for Wednesday at 11 o'clock will take place in room 701 in the Student Center. In order to attend the sessions, you must sign up by clicking the links provided in the email sent from Coordinator of Planning, Jamie Kerr. I'm definitely going to be taking advantage of that UPass.
Well, yeah, because you live in the area.
Right, I commute, so it definitely would benefit, and I take a bus every day.
Well, it would benefit us as well, too, because I enjoy walking, like, I prefer to walk, but there's just some places you can't.
Well, then after a while, walking is just like, okay, I've had enough. I'm done. Put me on a bus.
It gets cold, too.
That
like,
too.
I walked down to the Target today, and I was like, I was freezing. Like, it was not the vibe.
I know, and the buses are heated, which is nice.
They are heated.
So.
Coming up after the break, we'll dive into this week's Pittsburgh news.
And make sure to stick around later in the show for your weekly sports and political news.
Don't go anywhere. Daybreak will be right back.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to Newsnight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen raiding.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more.
All this and more.
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
Coming up on Newsnight.
Coming up on Newsnight.
Without further ado, here is your city news. This past Saturday in downtown Pittsburgh, hundreds of men and women gathered outside the city-county building. This march was a part of a nationwide day of action to fight for abortion rights. Orchestrated by Women's March Pittsburgh, titled Women's Wave, We Won't Go Back. The parade included Democratic Party members Mayor Ed Gainey and State Representative Summer Lee. Chants of "Our bodies, our choice" and "We won't go back" arose from the streets. Pittsburgh resident Megan Kaiser commented, quote, "I'm here today for women and people with uteruses everywhere. I think we are all here representing our frustration directed towards the government and their decisions to control our bodies. So hopefully people see us and show up in the polls to vote for human rights and got women everywhere." End quote. Currently in Pennsylvania, within the first 23 weeks of pregnancy, abortion is still legal. The right to abortion is definitely affecting the midterm elections. If you have not yet registered to vote, you still have time. Election day is November 8th.
Bigelow Boulevard is now open in both directions after an emergency demolition of the Finland pedestrian bridge in Pittsburgh's Polish Hill neighborhood was completed over the weekend. According to Pittsburgh Public Safety, Bigelow Boulevard in between the Bloomfield Bridge and Heron Avenue was forced to close when a tri-axle truck was hauling the crane with its boom extended that smashed into the bridge Friday morning. Upon inspection, it was determined that the bridge would need to be demolished in order for Bigelow Boulevard to reopen to traffic. The bridge was then demolished Friday evening by contractors Meal and Meal, who Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey thanked after the job was completed. Gainey said, quote, "I am incredibly thankful and proud of the team from DOMI and our partners at PennDOT who came together and quickly and efficiently in order to keep our residents safe and reopen this critical piece of our infrastructure. I would also like to thank the contractor Meal and Meal for their quick work in helping us reopen Bigelow Boulevard as quickly and as safely as possible," end quote. The city has said there is no timeline as to when a new pedestrian bridge will be constructed.
Pitt basketball player Dior Johnson has been suspended from the basketball team while facing assault charges. Last month, Pittsburgh police were called to the Bridge, an apartment complex in Oakland. Johnson allegedly slapped her across the face and punched the victim in her stomach, head, and arms multiple times. He then pushed her head into the bed, making it hard for her to breathe, and also chased her with scissors. Johnson then took the scissors and started cutting himself multiple times while telling the victim, quote, "I'll make them think you did this." He called off of basketball practice due to not wanting the victim to leave the apartment or called the police. Pitt senior Lily Robertson explained, quote, "Just being a Pitt student athlete, it's unfortunate to hear. I know that's not the standard the coaches hold us to. It's scary, really scary, especially with other incidents that have been happening around campus. Obviously, the Cathedral of Learning. There needs to be a change in the school, but only in the school, but the athletic department too, it sounds like," end quote. Pitt's athletic department declined to comment on the incident.
That's horrible.
Because that's so close too. That's 2 miles down the road. That's such a tragic
Yeah.
incident like that happens.
That's scary. You don't think about that happening in real life. You see that like on TV shows, but you never think that it would hit that close to
Well,
home.
Pitt's actually investigating multiple charges with things happening like this. It's hard. I feel bad for all the victims, and I pray for them.
Yeah. Coming up after the break, we'll hear all about our Pittsburgh sports with Samuel Parator on this week's edition of Sam's Sideline Slice.
Then reporter Colleen Winder will politismack this week's political news.
But don't forget to stay tuned to the end to hear this week's Ray of Sunshine.
Daybreak will be right back.
Welcome back to Daybreak, everybody. My name is Samuel Parator, back again with this week's Sideline Slice, where I catch you up with what happened last week and what to expect in the next one. Last week was quite a tough one for the Pittsburgh Steelers as they traveled to Orchard Park to take on the Buffalo Bills, who are looking like one of the scariest teams in the league this year throughout the first couple of weeks, because even with their laundry list of injuries, they will still find ways to win, only losing one game on the year thus far. This game was no different. We were able to pin them deep off the opening kickoff, which gave us a bit of hope, but then Josh Allen found receiver Gabriel Davis for a 98-yard touchdown right through our secondary right off the bat, and they never looked back. They picked apart our defense and held our offense to only one field goal as they cruised to a 38-3 victory. Our offense showed a couple of flashes here and there, but overall they were pretty much just stalled at every turn, something that we're used to seeing as of late in the first 5 weeks. This loss drops us to 1-4 on the year, and it might be getting close to hitting that panic button. With games against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers next week, upstart Miami Dolphins the week after that, and after that the currently unbeaten Philadelphia Eagles, it's going to get a little bit tough, and it doesn't look like it's getting any easier after that. We might be 1-7 before this bye week. Things need to change quick, and it might be offense, it might be staff. It needs to happen right now, or else this is just going to be a very ugly season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hopefully we will be able to pick it up next week, keep it in a little bit closer, being at home, and the Buccaneers not looking as good as they used to, but it does not look very good for Yinzer Nation. At least this Penguins start tonight. That's all for me. Let's send it over to Kalyan Winder for this week's Politismack.
Thanks, Sam. I'm Kalyan Winder, and this is Politismack. Rhode Island is tackling the war on drugs in their corner by opening the first supervised consumption site legalized by a state. The consumption site run by Project Weber will provide drug users with medical professionals and clean needles as to discourage the spread of deadly infections and to lower the overdose rate. In addition to this, the sites will also have treatment centers and other resources to encourage and help drug users quit in a safe, long-lasting way. During the Trump administration, sites like these were greatly discouraged, with the administration suing a group in Philadelphia that was aiming to open a site. Biden's administration is now considering dropping that lawsuit. However, it's experiencing difficulties with the widespread agreement for harm reduction policies, such as this. Rhode Island specifically has faced more overdoses in 2021 than any other year, causing a state committee to provide $2 million in funding for Rhode Island from litigation against opioid manufacturers. Project Weber is asked to provide a detailed plan and application to the state before they can receive funding for a 2-year experimental run of the clinic. In other national news, Biden is considering a humanitarian parole program that will be opening to Venezuelan immigrants. Venezuela is currently facing many political and economical issues that is causing many Venezuelans to flee their country. If Biden were to pass this program, it would be similar to the program that is accessible to Ukrainian refugees. This would allow an American friend or family member to sponsor a refugee applying on their behalf and committing to provide financial assistance while they're in the U.S. More than 150,000 Venezuelan refugees have been apprehended at the U.S. border from October 2021 to the past August. The program would encourage refugees not to cross the border illegally, but to fly to the U.S. to find refugee closer to home. Additionally, under the new plan, refugees who are already in the country illegally and turn themselves in will no longer be taken to the U.S. custody, but will be sent to Mexico, who has recently agreed to accept Venezuelan refugees. Contrarily, from the Ukrainian program, which received bipartisan support, this possible program is not popular with Republican government officials. This plan has not yet been finalized, and therefore administration officials are unable to release any exact details yet. Now let's hand it over to the host for this week's Ray of Sunshine.
In case this is your first time joining us, or you need a refresher, Ray of Sunshine is our way of starting your day with a simple smile and an inspirational quote.
With midterms coming up, it's easy to feel stressed. So this week we'll be talking about persevering through times that might be really tough.
This week's quote comes from singer Dolly Parton and reads, "The way I see it, if you want the rainbow, you gotta put up with the rain."
I love Dolly Parton.
I know you love Dolly Parton.
I love Dolly Parton. I mean, I love country music in general, but Dolly Parton just like holds a special place in everybody's heart, I think, especially with that quote.
She's so inspirational. She's always so positive.
She's hilarious too.
She had such a hard life.
Like the way she talks, it's hysterical, the jokes she makes.
No, I think this quote is like, especially like with what we do in general here at college, like we put up with all these things. We put through the rain, especially in Pittsburgh. But at the end, we always see a slight little rainbow.
And it's all for a purpose.
Yeah, it is all
We
for a
go
purpose.
through so much, and it's all for a purpose.
Facts.
Well, that is it for this episode of Daybreak. Thank you so much for watching.
You can catch clips from all of our previous Daybreak episodes on our YouTube at UView Television.
And don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at DaybreakPPU. Until next time, I'm Anthony Durzo.
And I'm Jillian Musser, hoping your news is great news. See you next week, everyone.